Hello. In this video, I'll talk about how and why to use ACRO in R. The ACRO package is an interface to a set of functions written in Python. ACRO can be used to produce different types of outputs, such as tables, regression, and graphs. You might have a question in your mind that's why should I use ACRO instead of the R commands? And here are some advantages to using ACRO. ACRO saves you time and effort by doing a real-time disclosure checks when you create the outputs. It also gives you an immediate feedback that can allow you to adjust the outputs to pass the checks. ACRO gives you control on your results and analysis. For example, it gives you the choice to perform suppression to the output that fails the disclosure checks. It also lets you add comments and exceptions to communicate with the output checkers and give reasoning for some of your results. Another advantage is that you can pick ACRO easily as it has a minimal learning curve. Most of the commands are known commands, especially in Python, and there are a lot of resources for them. Another thing is that the commands used for managing the outputs, such as renaming, removing, or commenting, are simple and self-explanatory. It's also easy to add other files to the ACRO object so that it can be picked by the output checkers to check and approve. ACRO was originally built on two famous Python libraries, pandas and stats models. The R version of the ACRO package is making the translation from the R commands to the Python commands. It's not something you need to worry about because it's done automatically for you in the background. A lot of ACRO commands are similar to the R commands, except that you need to add the word ACRO and then underscore to the beginning of the command. For example, for making simple tables, the command ACRO underscore table behaves exactly like you'd expect R's built-in table command to. Also, for creating regression models, ACRO underscore LM function creates a linear regression the same way the RLM function is supposed to. Making more complex tables can be done in one command. At the moment, we support the ACRO underscore crosstab function, which uses the pandas extremely flexible functionality. If you want to practice and test ACRO in your own environment, you can install it from CRAN using this command, install.packages ACRO. If you are inside a TRE, this step will be done for you. Now it's time to load the ACRO package. You can do this normally as you do with other R packages using the command library ACRO. You need to create an ACRO session before using any other ACRO functions. You can do this by calling the function ACRO underscore init. This function takes as an input the parameter suppress, which can be either true or false. It's used to choose whether to automatically apply suppression to the outputs or not. The default is no suppression. The output from this function is, firstly, the ACRO version, which shows which version of ACRO package you are using. In this case, it's version 0.4.5. The ACRO configuration, which shows the disclosure rules of the TRE. For example, in this case, the threshold is 10 respondents. Anything less than this will be considered disclosive. The last information is showing whether the automatic suppression will be applied or not. After you are done preparing the environment, now it's time to prepare the data for your research. You can pre-process the data the way you want. There is no rules or restrictions on the process you can apply to the data to make it feasible for the analysis. Now you are ready to start your research. In this slide and the following slides, I'll show you an example of producing the same table using R and then using ACRO. Here we use the R command table to produce a simple cross tabulation, and the output is a table with the frequency in each cell. To produce the same result using ACRO, the command ACRO underscore table is used with the same index and columns. The ACRO command differs from the R command in the way it produces the results. As you can see here, a disclosure check was performed and the feedback is shown immediately after you run the ACRO command. In this case, the output passed the checks and the outcome data frame showing if each cell in the table passed or failed the disclosure checks. Besides the feedback from the checks, the actual output is displayed, and this is the same output produced by the rtable command. Here is another example of producing more complex tables using ACRO. This is done simply by using the Python function crosstab, which has tens of thousands of websites providing help. The ACRO version of the crosstab command is the ACRO_crosstab, and then you pass the parameters. The outputs from this command has the same structure as the outputs from the ACRO table command. In red, we have the feedback, which is showing the summary of the disclosure checks. In this case, the table fails the checks with 1 cell violating the threshold rule, 4 cells violating the B-ratio rule, and 4 cells violating the NK rule. The outcome table is giving more details of the checks in each cell. And here you can see the actual resulting table from the crosstab process. ACRO is not only used in producing tables, but can also be used in regression. Here is an example of using ACRO to produce a linear regression using the command acro_lm. The outputs from this command are as we expected, the feedback from the disclosure checks in the red color, showing that the output passed the check of the degree of freedom, and then the actual output is shown in black. After you are done and happy with the outputs, you should call the finalize function. To call this function, you should pass the directory name and the format of the output, which could be either JSON or Excel. The default is JSON. By calling this function, you don't need to manually organize your results in a folder, as this function writes the outputs and the summary of the disclosure checks to a folder that contains everything the output checkers need to make the decision. ACRO also contains other functions that allows you to communicate with output checkers by adding comments or descriptions that provide some context to the output, or by sending an exception request if the output is disclosive but you think you have reasoning for that. For example, you may want to ask for exception if you think that some zeros are structural and are not actually disclosive. There are other functions that help you manage and manipulate the outputs, such as adding a custom output that was not produced using ACRO to the ACRO object. If you did this, then when you call finalize, this output will be added to the output folder. Another function is the rename function, which can be used to rename an output to maybe a more descriptive name. You can also delete a disclosive output using remove_output, and you can display all the outputs to the screen using print outputs. To learn more about the available functions in the ACRO package and the documentation of these functions and their parameters, you can use the R command help package equal ACRO. And here is the result for the help command. The list of the functions are shown, and you can click in one function to know more about it. For more information, you can follow the first link for the ACRO package in Python or the second link for the ACRO package in R. The third link is an R notebook that shows an example of a research session using ACRO. Thank you.